Good evening, folks. I just wanted to do a video. When you begin to talk about black accomplishments in America, the first thing Negroes love to talk about is Black Wall Street. And they paint this picture as if blacks were humbling, angelic, sitting around, not doing anything, creating their own utopian businesses, which was in some degree true. And a white mob came through because they were jealous because of the black accomplishments, and came through and burnt some 30 some odd square blocks of black accomplishment, black success. When nothing could be further from the truth. There's been a lot of exaggeration concerning the Black Wall Street in Tulsa. What many leave out is that the northeastern part of Oklahoma, Tulsa, experienced and is experiencing a large oil boom. And what Black Wall Street really is, people, you hear a lot of black folks gloat in this nostalgia of black success. What they fail to realize is that in order for black people didn't create this on their own. It was oil money. It was oil that cultivated an environment when one could flourish by white men. Oil revenue, oil exploration, oil export was the doing of white men. And Black Wall Street was a mere byproduct of that. It's not like black folks created Black Wall Street. If anything, it shows that white people sectioned off, forced blacks to work with one another through segregation, which to me, segregation in and of itself isn't wrong. And if you look in the course of history, blacks have done very well under segregated conditions. They were forced to work with one another. But see, black folks, when they get to talking like this, they talk from the vantage point of, well, we came here and we built up Black Wall Street from our bare hands, which is not true. You name one place in America where blacks created from their own ingenuity, skill, and flourished. None. It's always been it's always been by the hand of white folks. Now, let me say this. Oklahoma experienced Jim Crow. We traditionally understand Jim Crow to be in the South. But eastern Oklahoma has had a lot of Ku Klux Klan, a lot of Jim Crow type laws. Some states were more strenuous, had more lengthy and more detailed laws in the South. Like I believe in Oklahoma, whites and blacks can go to school. That was a no-no in much of the South. That was a no-no in Alabama, and I know that much. Still in Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, but Oklahoma wasn't as rigid with their Jim Crow laws. Nevertheless, they had Jim Crow laws. But this idea that black folk, and this comes to exaggeration. And, the riots started off because a young black man, many people don't talk about this, Dick Rawlin, who was a shoe shineman who used an elevator allowed by his white boss and encountered a white female, Sarah Page. Apparently there was some type of unwanted touching or something to that effect, and she let out a scream, she complained. Now, some of you all are saying it's the same old Emmett Till type story, and the white woman screaming and crying foul when the big black man is in the area or touches her. But anyway, a trial is is set. Groups of black and white mobs come together outside of the courthouse. Black mobs come to defend, to ensure nothing happens to Mr. Rollin. Which tells me that black folks in Jim Crow, in that era, had the ability to muster, to gather, without really any fear. So if blacks were so suppressed, why did they gather? Why did they gather then? I mean, surely a mob of blacks, surely if these black folks were scared and frightened every minute by white people, they surely wouldn't have gathered. You'd think someone would say, well, them white folks, they don't want to see more than 3 of us together. We better not. Yet these black folks formed mobs, came in carloads. They even came with loaded weapons. White mobs came to confront, and it was a real race riot. This was a real race riot where you had, and this is another thing you don't hear, blacks were killing white people. Blacks were mobbing white women, whites by themselves. See, we always hear, when you hear Black Wall Street, you're always left with the impression, you don't hear about this case that I just spoke about briefly. And I'm not going to talk, in great detail about the case. But you don't hear about it. When you hear Black Wall Street, you're left with the idea that white people were mad at black success, which I've just debunked. Because if there were any white success, put it this way, if there wasn't white men pumping oil out of that ground in northeastern Oklahoma, you wouldn't have had a Black Wall Street. You wouldn't have had that. But we're left with the idea that whites were bitter and upset, that blacks were doing commerce amongst one another, that they were thriving and prospering, when nothing can be far from the truth. Because everybody was thriving. There was a lot of oil money up there, which also enhanced black success up there. Because we can say that if there weren't any oil money, you probably wouldn't even have a Black Wall Street. You just had a bunch of black folks doing commerce and working amongst themselves. But you had millionaires in Black Wall Street. And it was because of the oil industry. Everybody was getting in on it. But you're left with this exaggerated tale of the evil whites, when there's accounts of, as I said, blacks shooting white people. It was a real race riot that black people lost. That's pretty much the summarization of this story. Black folks lost a race riot because they had weapons. And in a race riot, I mean, we say, well, they burned down everything. Well, you don't hear that. We don't hear that black people were shooting people, white people. Now, some of y'all say, well, under the conditions of Jim Crow, they had the right. Not necessarily true. That doesn't give you the right to shoot and kill anybody. So white people, they shot back and fought back. I mean, read the accounts. Go read the accounts. I'm not going to do it for you. I've done some research. I've been doing a little bit of research. Because I said, this Black Wall Street, the first thing Negroes want to say about black progress is they love throwing that Black Wall Street up in your face. And that's all they say. They don't go into anything. They just say Black Wall Street and blase, blase, blase. They never really go, and I'm not even going very into intricate details of it. But I'm pulling stuff out that you don't hear about. And there's a lot of exaggeration that goes on. If anything, it tells me that black people can't be successful without the crack of the whip of white folks. That's really what it is. And I've said, black folks, you've embraced integration so much that you don't even like working with one another. You're scared of one another. And I think we're too far gone now. I mean, there's no way I would open a business in a so-called black community. And I point you to Exhibit A and B, Ferguson, Missouri, Baltimore, Maryland. There's absolutely no reason why I would do that. No way I would do that. But you embrace integration so much that, you know, this is what happened. That's why I said segregation is good. And it would have forced blacks to continue. You see, the black problem in America, we were once a people that were determined, had a work ethic, had some morals. We were that, despite our conditions. And I'm not going to sit here and deny Jim Crow and slavery. No man should be subject to another man. No man should feel like it's separate, treated like a second-class citizen. But in essence, we're really not all equal at the same time. Some people are good at things. Some people are not good at things. We just so happen to be not good in creating civilizations that last, that are of substance, that are superior as others. Now, we've, you know, over in the continent, we could talk about Africa and Korea. Yeah, there were civilizations, but they were inferior civilizations. If you let's put on our realist lenses on, they were inferior in a number of ways. And some people like to say, well, you know, if you never would have known what white European success and culture was, you would never know. Well, I do know. And I can tell you what, I would much rather live in 4 cement wall covered homes with AC and things like that, internet, than in dirt mounded huts. And I think if you put a caveman, if you put a caveman, I know, you think about, is it relative to today? I think if you put an ancient person in a 4-bedroom wall, with AC, the comforts, this AC in heat out of the elements, he would probably, or she would probably prefer that than a outside grass hut where you're in the elements and things like that. Because now we're just dealing with human comforts. You don't even have to introduce internet or microwave or oven or washer and dryer. This temperature change would be like, yeah, I like this more better in its primitive language or whatever. But yeah, you know, Tulsa, Black Wall Street, look at Tulsa now. It's called Thug Town. Majority of the murders there are black. The majority of the victims are black. So here are your descendants of Black Wall Street. Thug Town. And we know how black folks feel about the word thug. To them, it's equivalent of calling somebody the nigger. So why don't we just call Tulsa Nigger Town? Peace.